you like scary movies?
No, but I love Scream. I am not a horror girl. I was born and raised in the Bahamas, and in keeping with my island spirit, I am incredibly superstitious, and I do not play with all them demons, ghosts, the devil, or otherwise scary shit. I've actually lost years of my life to playing with the wrong horror movies. When I was in the 3rd grade, my auntie Kendra, an adult woman, called me a because I didn't want to watch 13 Ghosts. So I watched it and then spent the next 2 years of my young life sprinting in and out of my home's white bathroom that reminded me of the model in 13 Ghosts. If you know, you know. In grade 6, I couldn't sleep for a summer because my big sister convinced me to watch Amityville Horror. Shortly after that, The Exorcism of Emily Rose really to my life up because they had the audacity to begin that movie with that evil ass inspired by true events. I watched Insidious my senior year of high school, and now that tiptoe through the garden ass song makes me feel transported to hell. And watching The Conjuring in college caused me to scratch at my car door, peeling my scary ass into my grandma's yard too fast. It's a long story, man. Don't worry about it. The point is, I say all this to say, I am not a horror girl, but I am a Scream girl. I love Scream. Not just the first movie, the entire franchise. And while all Scream movies are not made equally, there's something very special about the franchise that I think they've managed to hold on to throughout their highs and their lows. And it's the reason why even people like me, who generally do not enjoy horror movies, can love these movies. The Scream movies are slasher movies, but they're also a commentary on slasher movies. They're what you'd call meta, because they're horror movies offering commentary on horror movies. They're self-aware that they're following the rules of horror movies and slasher films of its genre, and the characters consistently reference the rules and tropes of the horror genre to try to solve the murder mystery happening to them within the movies. The Scream movies are so meta that they have their own fictional franchise like Scream within the movies called Stab.
Stab. Real stab movies are meta slasher whodunits, full stop.
While the movies do actively engage and recreate the different tropes of the genre and don't take themselves too seriously, the Scream movies are still much more serious than a parody. Scream not only commits to building up the rules of its own horror universe, what it does best from the very first movie, and what I believe sets it apart from other horror franchises and allows it to connect with normies like me, it invests you in the characters and even the town of Woodsboro. Many horror movies, especially the ones of my time, pride themselves on as much murder, wickedness, and evil as possible. It's about having as many victims as possible or being as sick and twisted as possible. But the victims don't regularly matter, or you don't get enough time or opportunity to get to know many victims for a long time. You might get some one-offs you care about here and there, for sure. I cared when Kelly Rowland, Charlie Linderman, and Brendan Fletcher's characters got in Freddy vs. Jason. I'm always sick when Justin Long gets snatched by my boy Big Jeep. Jeepers Creepers. But I didn't and don't know a single one of those characters' names in either one of those movies. Just like I don't know most any victims in any of the many horror movies I've watched. And that's fine, because knowing, loving, or deeply connecting with the victims is rarely the point of those movies. The point is to scare you, and you're too busy being scared to death to care too much about who the they're killing in movies like Annabelle, or Nightmare on Elm Street, or Jason, or The Ring, and so on and so forth, because the focus is usually on the killer. That's the draw, the lore around whatever psycho they've created. That's true from Chucky and Tiffany and Child's Play, to Psycho, to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to The Hills Have Eyes, to Saw, to the scary ass old bitch in Insidious, all the way to Megan. You are there for the killer, but Scream is different. You're not there for Ghostface. You're there to reconnect with Sidney Prescott, Gail Weathers, Randy Meeks, Officer Dewey's old stupid ass, and even as time goes on in the reboots, Kirby and the self-proclaimed Core 4. Don't get me wrong, Ghostface is iconic, and the franchise would be nothing without the Ghostface imagery and the flawless voice acting from Roger L. Jackson that brings the killer to life and has made the franchise millions.
I think Roger brought a real intelligence and, creepiness, probably much more intelligent than we had planned on.
It was not only his intelligence and creepiness that won the veteran voice actor the role, but his ability to completely terrify the actors he was playing against. In truth, though Jackson only played the voice of the killer, he actually was on set and on the phone during each take, but kept completely hidden from the actors, which only added to the character's frightening mystique.
Well, that's actually an interesting thing. Wes did not let the actors see who was doing the voice.
It was always a point to keep us separate, because my job is to frighten them during the filming. There is no monster as frightening as the one you create in your own imagination.
Nevertheless, Ghostface is to the movies what the monsters are to Scooby-Doo. In Scooby-Doo, we're invested in the reveal of the monster at the end to make the mystery we've been trying to solve worth it. But the reason we were trying to solve it, the reason we were watching, was to hang out with Scooby and the gang. Same way, the Scream movies absolutely do need a good Ghostface reveal to justify the events of the movie and make the payoff worth it. Which is why it is generally true that the worse the Ghostface reveal, the worse the Scream movie. But what keeps you watching Scream movies regardless of how good the last one was or wasn't is your desire to spend time with and reconnect with the characters. The Scream movies don't scare you in the traditional sense. I don't watch them and feel the need to close my eyes or worry that I won't be able to sleep later that night or turn the lights off. When I watch Scream, I feel scared for my favorite characters. I'm worried that these specific I love are going to get got. And when they do, I feel grief. And not grief that goes away. I still think it was a mistake to kill off Randy Meeks, and we will be talking about it later on. My point is, what makes Scream special? While the heart of many horror films is the horror, the villain it centers around, the heart of Scream are the characters, the victims of Ghostface, and the relationships they have to each other. As iconic and inseparable as the Ghostface mask is from Scream, Sidney Prescott, Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott, is the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of Scream. And right after her, I think of Gail, Dewey, Randy, Billy Loomis, and the town of Woodsboro, despite only 3 of the 6 Scream movies taking place in Woodsboro. The Scream franchise does such an amazing job making a horror franchise feel like comfort movies that when I watched the 4th installment in the franchise, Scream 4, in theaters when it came out, and realized we were back in Woodsboro for the first time since the first Scream, I was no less comforted than I am when I turn on my absolute favorite comfort movie, Bridget Jones's Diary. Do you know how impressive it is to make a town that I know and have watched tons of people be massacred in still feel like a cute, quaint suburb I'm happy to see? This shit feels like Wisteria Lane. Like, I don't want to be on Elm Street. Don't take me anywhere in that cabin Jason got all that trauma with. I'd kill myself before I go anywhere near the Amityville home. But shots of Woodsboro feel like home. And that's all owed to the foundation laid out by the first movie in the franchise, Scream. Scream was flawless. Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven came together to give us gold.
Really nailed the tone, because I was trying to create something new and different that we haven't seen before. I wanted it to sort of just be perverse and very sort of satirical, but very real, and he nailed it. I mean, I was watching the dailies the other day, and it was just incredible. It was just, it's amazing. I don't think we've seen a film like this in a long time. I mean, when was the last time you saw a really scary movie? And I think we got it.
Scream laid the groundwork for every sequel that's followed. And while none of the sequels have ever come anywhere near it, our love of what the first movie was is so great that the fragments of it that the sequels gives us is enough to keep us coming back. As a result, it only makes sense that this retrospective give the most time and attention to the foundation of the franchise. So, let's talk about Scream. Neve Campbell is iconic as Sidney Prescott, the Scream franchise's leading lady. But believe it or not, our girl wasn't the first choice for the role. In fact, Sidney Prescott was originally supposed to be played by Drew Barrymore. Now, Drew Barrymore is still a big deal in my mind, but in 1996, Drew Barrymore was huge. So huge, in fact, that she was actually one of the main reasons Wes Craven even reluctantly agreed to direct the movie in the first place. And she was also the reason he almost quit the movie. When 5 weeks before they were set to start filming, Drew decided she didn't want to star as Sidney Prescott in the movie, and that she instead wanted to play Casey, Sidney's classmate who's killed in the opening scene of the movie. Now listen, if you were a teenage girl like me in 2007 when Stomp the Yard came out, you remember exactly where you were and how you felt watching that movie for the first time, only for the Chris Brown the movie was marketed around to be killed off in the first 10 minutes. Oh, we could have rioted. But about a decade earlier, Drew Barrymore and Scream walked so Chris Brown could crump, okay? The opening scene of Scream is and will forever be iconic. Despite the fact that Drew Barrymore is killed in the first 10 minutes of the movie, the studio still marketed the entire movie around her. She's the face on the 1996 movie poster because they knew that's what would get people in the seat. feats.
And even though Drew Barrymore would no longer be playing the lead, the producers and Wes Craven quickly realized that losing their star didn't mean losing her star power.
With Drew being attached, that's really what got the rest of the cast into it.
The phones were ringing off the hook. Everybody wanted to be in this movie. So our casting sessions were fantastic.
They also knew it would subvert people's expectations right out the gate, because nobody's going to think that Drew Barrymore is getting killed off, let alone at the beginning. So no one's ready for it when we do see Ghostface not only chase that poor girl down and stab her repeatedly, but that her parents come home as Ghostface is chasing her in the yard and trying to finish her off. But as they're walking into their home, they don't see their bloody daughter crawling on the ground, gasping the words mom as she tries to get away from her masked assailant. And when they do enter the home and realize their daughter is in danger and frantically try to find her, they run out of the house and meet their daughter hung from a tree in their yard with her guts on the outside. Everything about this scene, the gasps from Drew, her mother's scream, and the final shot of her hanging is so chilling and so flawlessly done that it made Drew Barrymore's 10 minutes in the film deserving of the billing it got. And it set the tone for every Scream opening scene to follow.
It was such a canny decision. She worked for 5 days, and she made a niche in cinematic history for her genre films in that 5 days of incredible work.
That scene was so immaculate that what began as Wes Craven and everyone involved with the making of this movie being really upset that the big name star they expected to carry the film wants to be killed off immediately ends up becoming one of the defining traits of the franchise. It's not really a Scream movie if they don't get some easily recognized or well-known celebrity to kill off at the top of every movie. In the first Scream, it's Drew Barrymore. In Scream 2, it's Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith. In Scream 3, it's Liev Schreiber and Kelly Rutherford. In Scream 4, although it's in the fictional stab movies, this is the first time we ever see those pieces of those movies, so they serve the same function as killing people we recognize at the outset of the movie. So we get Lucy Hale, Shanae Grimes, Anna Paquin, and Kristen Bell. And the first actual victims are played by Amy Teagarden and Britt Robertson. In Scream 5, we subvert shit a little bit. In the opening scene, victim survives, but she's played by Jenna Ortega, who wasn't Jenna Ortega then, but she's Jenna Ortega now, so still in keeping with the theme. And in Scream 6, the first kill is played by Samara Weaving. But back to the first Scream. It's after this opening scene where Casey's brutally killed when we meet the real star of this movie and subsequently the franchise, Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell.
The camera pans to a desk against the wall where Sidney Prescott, a young girl of 17, sits, her face glued to the computer monitor in front of her. I was at a place in my career was very new. You know, I had done Party of Five, and that had hit in the first year, and I'd done The Craft.
She just had a perfect combination of the innocence that you needed, but the strength of that girl who was going to be able to...
When we saw Neve Campbell, there was no question.
So who are you?
The question isn't, who am I? The question is, where am I?
So where are you?
The front porch.
Scream was really the first lead that I'd been up for in a film, and was called in and did a big audition, and I think I had several callbacks.
That's enough. Sub bucket out of here.
Do you see what you do to me?
Do you know what my dad will do to you?
You just believed her as this teenage girl, this vulnerable teenage girl.
When we first meet Sydney, she's in her bedroom when her boyfriend sneaks in through her bedroom window to pressure her for some pussy. Her boyfriend's name was Billy Loomis.
The Billy Loomis character, his name even is a tip of the hat to the Halloween movies, which were a big influence on Kevin. Sam Loomis is the character that Donald Pleasance played in the Halloween movies.
So we're looking at the part of Billy. It was so hard to find the perfect, handsome guy.
There suddenly was this buzz about this kid named Skeet Ulrich.
He reminded Wes certainly of when he cast Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Just me.
Totally nailed it. There was just no question. He was Billy. He was fabulous.
He was the hot young guy, and you look back now and his performance is pitch perfect.
Sheriff, I didn't kill anybody.
The rest of the main characters are as follows. Sydney's best friend's name was Tatum, and she was played by Rose McGowan.
From behind, a finger taps her shoulder. She spins around to see Tatum Riley, same age, feisty, carefree. I think Tatum was very glib, but at the same time she had a real sweetness, like in the scene in her bedroom. Bam! Sid!
Tatum's older brother was Officer Dewey Riley, played by David Arquette.
A young officer looks at the clipboard. This is Deputy Riley, better known as Dewey. He's a big guy, 20s, handsome in a scrub-clean, boyish way.
Dewey's love interest was Gale Weathers, played by Courtney Cox.
Playing the yin to Dewey's yang was Gale Weathers, a cynical TV journalist and a difficult role to cast, until a television star surprised everyone and lobbied hard to get the role.
We probably offered the role of Gale to Janine Garofalo, and she passed on it. We also were very close to hiring Brooke Shields. And then we met Courtney.
I wanted to play the part of Gale Weathers because she was just a total, it was something that I hadn't got to play in a while, at least being on Friends for so long.
She was the hottest thing coming off of Friends. I mean, for her to be in a movie like this was a very big deal because people were really used to seeing her on the #1 show.
And I had to really do some persuading to get the part because they didn't really see me as a... If I'm right about this, I could save a man's life. Do you know what that could do for my book sale?
Tatum's boyfriend was Stu Macher, played by Matthew Lillard.
Next to Tatum sits her boyfriend, Stuart, with his arms draped across her back. He's a Billy wannabe. Almost the jock, almost handsome, almost cool. He tries way too hard.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah, it was. I go back and watch that, I'm like, first of all, I weigh 80 pounds. Second of all, I spit my way through the whole thing. And that vein that runs through the middle of my forehead is terrifying.
And the last member of Sydney's circle was resident film geek Randy Meeks, played by Jamie Kennedy.
He's the Joker, the wild card, and he's the one that you can't quite figure out, and he can comment on everybody because he's just slightly outside the group.
Across the table is a fifth wheel Randy, a tall and gangly kid with no such Billy-like aspirations. A witty jokester who elevates geek to coolness.
Did you really put her liver in the mailbox? Because I heard that they found her liver in the mailbox next to her spleen and her pancreas.
Time I was a very struggling actor, and I said I gotta get in for this movie.
Randy is a significant character, not just because he's my favorite, but because it's Randy who first and routinely makes the characters and audience aware that they're in a horror movie following the rules of the genre, which is why every Scream movie either has Randy or a Randy-like character.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. No. Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Even in popcorn, sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin, it's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back.
The plot of Scream is simple. It's the execution that's flawless. Sydney was a teenage girl living with her father in a town called Woodsboro, which was in California. Sydney's mother was murdered the summer before the events of the movie, and her mother's killer was presumed to be a man named Cotton Weary, who was convicted and sentenced to death based on Sydney's testimony that she saw him at the scene of her mother's murder. Sydney hates a young journalist named Gale Weathers because Gale believes that Cotton Weary is innocent and wrote a book arguing that. The movie begins the year after Sydney's mother's death, when a mass killer murders 2 of her classmates, Casey and Steve, before attempting to murder her. The killer's MO is to call you in a scary ass voice, the Ghostface voice, and pretend he'll spare your life if you can correctly answer a bunch of scary movie questions, knowing full well he's gonna kill you regardless.
Fun game, Sydney. See, we ask you a question, and if you get it wrong, booga! You die.
You get it right, you die.
Sydney survives the first attack, and initially, she suspects her boyfriend Billy Loomis when he appears at her window shortly after an attack and a phone drops from his pocket. But once he's arrested and she receives a call from Ghostface while he's locked up, Billy is released and the mystery and murders continue until a final house party where Sydney's best friend Tatum is murdered, Randy is shot, Dewey is stabbed. Sydney finally loses her virginity to Billy against the express stated rules of both Scream and the non-sex positive horrors that came before it, as said by Randy earlier in the movie. And then just when she starts suspecting Billy may in fact be Ghostface, she's tricked into believing he was killed, only for Billy and Stu to eventually reveal themselves not only as Ghostface, but also as being responsible for murdering her mother the year earlier. The motive?
Why?
What?
You hear that, Stu? I think she wants a motive. I don't really believe in motive, Sid. I mean, did Norman Bates have a motive? No. Did they ever really decide why Hannibal Lecter liked to eat people? Don't think so. See, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive, Sid. We did your mom a favor, Sid. That woman was a slutbag whore who flashed her shit all over town like she was Sharon Stone or something.
Yeah, we put her out of her misery, because let's face it, Sydney, your mother was no Sharon Stone.
Is that motive enough for you? Your slut mother was fucking my father. She's the reason my mom moved out and abandoned me. How's that for a motive?
I love that when Billy reveals that his true motive for this is that he blames Sydney's mother for why his mom left because Sydney's mom had an affair with his dad, you can tell by the look on Stu's face that it's the first he's learning of this, which really emphasizes the truth in what Stu says later when he's scared his parents are going to find out he did this, that he really is an idiot who was easily peer pressured by his much smarter and more twisted best friend Billy.
Hello?
Oh, Stu, what's your motive? Billy's got one, the police are on their way. What are you gonna tell them?
Peer pressure. I'm far too sensitive.
I'm gonna rip you up, you bitch!
The reveal of Billy and Stu is perfect because it shocks you, but then you immediately hit yourself in the head for ever letting Billy con you into thinking it wasn't him, when of course it's this evil looking. Look at everything about how chilling this looks, talks, and moves. Who the else could it be? I can't heap enough praise onto Skeet Ulrich's performance as Billy Loomis. He was incredible. Imagine a line reading being this damn good.
How about this? Your slut mother was sleeping with my dad. And that's the reason my mother left me. Think about it. On the off chance I get caught. That motive would have any jury divided for years, don't you think? You took my motive, so I took yours.
The reveal is so good because the moment you run back the events of the movie in your mind, or rewatch it with the knowledge that it's Billy and Stu, you realize that you had many clues and reasons to suspect them, which is what a good twist is made of. It surprises you while also making total sense because suddenly all the dots connect and you realize the answer was there all along. We not only get clues right out the gate, but we're told repeatedly who Ghostface was. The first kills in the movie, Casey and her boyfriend, might have seemed random because they had no connection to our protagonist Sydney, or even our main suspect, Billy. But the moment the gang learns of their murders, Sydney and Randy make the connection to Stu and clock his motive, but they let it go.
Hey, Stu, didn't you used to date Casey?
Yeah, for like 2 seconds. Before she dumped him for Steve.
I thought you dumped her for me.
I did, he's full of shit.
And are the police aware that you dated the victim?
Hey, what are you saying? That I killed her?
It would certainly improve your high school kill.
And Randy very confidently asserts that it's clearly Billy, based on both the rules of the genre and what his common sense can tell just looking at Billy's weird ass.
He's got killer printed all over his forehead.
Okay. Really? Why'd the cops let him go, smart guy?
Because obviously they don't watch enough movies. This is standard horror movie stuff. Prom Night Revisited, man.
Why would he want to kill his own girlfriend?
There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend. That's the beauty of it all. Simplicity. Besides, if it gets too complicated, you lose your target audience.
What's his reason?
Maybe Sydney wouldn't have sex with him.
There's also another time, shortly after Billy is released from police custody, that he runs into Sydney after she's walking away from Stu and Tatum when Billy denies that he couldn't be the killer because he was in jail when she got a call. And if you pay attention, you can see his eyes avert her gaze to glance at Stu in the distance as he says this.
You still think it's me?
No, I don't. It's just somebody was there. Billy, someone tried to kill me.
I know. No, the cops said I scared him away. It wasn't me, Sid.
I know. He called me again last night at Tatum's house.
See? Couldn't have been me. I was in jail.
It all makes sense in retrospect, and you kick yourself for letting the movie trick you out of suspecting Billy. But even though I kicked myself for prematurely eliminating Billy as a suspect, I'm in awe of how Matthew Lillard made Stu feel so likable that I never suspected his involvement when he was closest connected to all the victims, even closer than Billy was. Think about who the victims were. The first victims were his ex-girlfriend and the guy she left him for. Tatum was his girlfriend that he just sent down to the basement where she was then murdered. Randy was his friend. Dewey was his girlfriend's brother. The gag is that the very reason I should have suspected Stu is exactly why I didn't. Stu was always smiling up in all these people's faces like he genuinely with them the long way, and he hadn't yet demonstrated to me that he was a nut ass, that he would murder his loved ones just because. Like, why are you gonna kill Tatum? All that lady's done is love you and give you pussy and an alibi the whole movie.
I killed her?
It would certainly improve your high school kill.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah, it was.
Once Billy and Stu reveal themselves, their motives, and their plan, they proceed to stab each other to sell the ruse to the police that they were victims. But Billy's evil ass stabs Stu much more critically than was discussed or necessary, because Stu loves Billy and Billy's using Stu.
I'm gonna die! I always thought of it as Captain Hook and Smee in Peter Pan. You know, you have this devilish kind of leader who's charismatic and beautiful and everyone, you know, follows him, but he's got this little sidekick and he'll do anything.
They have this sort of dynamic duo quality. Skeet's character Billy is definitely the mastermind of the operation. I think Matthew Lillard's character is probably in love with him and is willing to do anything he says.
A YouTube channel called Beyond the Mask has a phenomenal video titled Were Billy Loomis and Stu Macher Gay?, where he explains that Kevin Williamson, the man who wrote Scream, based Billy and Stu off of two handsome-ass gay serial killers named Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb.
It was believed by the police investigators and analyzers of that situation that Richard Loeb was the dominant killer and Nathan Leopold was in love with him. And so this is what Kevin Williamson based his characters of Billy Loomis and Stu Macher off. Here's what Kevin Williamson said when describing the Leopold and Loeb murder case. It was very sort of homoerotic, in the sense that there were these two guys that killed this other person just to see if they could get away with it. One of the reasons that one could get the other one to follow is because I think the other one was secretly in love with him. It was a fascinating case study in double murders. If you Google Leopold and Loeb, you will see and you'll read about it and you'll get, okay, that's Billy and Stu. He then went on to say, is Stu secretly in love with Billy? Maybe. Did Billy manipulate that? Possibly. It's all left up for you to wonder, because Billy is the one who is leading. Billy is the one who had the mother. Billy was the one who was sort of orchestrating it, and Stu was the person who helped carry it out. So it sort of puts Stu in that position of, what was his feelings towards his best friend?
Is that super relevant to this retrospective? No, but it's good tea, ain't it? While they're going back and forth stabbing each other and being sickos, Sydney escapes. She and Gail eventually get the drop on Billy and Stu, and they definitively kill Billy and presumably kill Stu. I say presumably killed Stu because fans have long speculated that Stu didn't die, because while Billy was shot in the head and they were both stabbed, only a TV fell on Stu's head as his final blow. And while Stu being alive was maybe just wishful thinking on our parts for a long time, it might be reality because Matthew Lillard was tapped to reprise his role as Stu in Scream 7. So our fan theories, hopes, and wishes might prevail. Although, there's also a chance they just bring him back as a ghost or some bullshit like that. And I would not put it past them because they've taken to bringing back Skeet Ulrich to play Billy Loomis in the form of his daughter's hallucinations in the recent movies. So I will prepare myself for the worst whilst hoping for the best. The movie ends with Sydney, Randy, Gail, and Dewey surviving. And they, along with Billy Loomis and Stu Macher, become the spirit of the franchise. The thing that really anchors you in what Scream should be at its best. Which is why you will never watch a Scream movie that does not call back to each of these characters in one or more ways, even after they've been killed off. Whether it be via returning to Stu Macher's home in the 5th movie, 50% of the core 4 being Randy's niece and nephew who invoke his memory regularly, Ghost Hallucination Billy, or just outright bringing Sydney, Gail, and Dewey back every chance they get, the Scream writers are going to make sure you're reminded why you're a part of this fandom. Now, let's talk about Scream 2. What I will give Scream 2 is that the opening scene is very memorable. I watched Scream 2 for the first time as a very little kid. The only thing I remembered for a long time was Omar Epps being stabbed through that bathroom stall because his nosy ass illogically put his face against a nasty ass bathroom stall to listen to what other people doing. And my girl Jada Pinkett Smith getting killed in front of a theater full of people who couldn't tell that what was happening to her was real and not part of the special early showing of the Stab movie. Whilst I don't typically appreciate horror movies feeling compelled to kill off black people first, in the case of Scream, it's them honoring the horror movie tropes and rules, so I'll allow it. Now, I don't have too many more positive things to say about Scream 2, but I still do have some. The plot for Scream 2 is as follows. Sidney Prescott and Randy Meeks have now left Woodsboro to go to Windsor College. Randy's living his best life studying film, where he can be appreciated for his knowledge as head of the film nerds, and Sidney is also doing well because she has a good-looking boyfriend who's in love with her and a black best friend who should have asked for a room change the minute she got paired with the bitch who mother and friends got sliced up in recent years. Sister. They're doing well until 2 students at their college are murdered at the premiere of the new Stab movie based on the Woodsboro murders, and they start to fear that there may be a copycat killer who's going to go after them. What starts as suspicion is quickly confirmed as fact when Ghostface murders Sarah Michelle Gellar for absolutely no reason before almost getting the drop on Sydney, at which point Sydney and Randy, as well as Dewey and Gale, are trying to find out who Ghostface is and not get killed. Here is the first and most serious of my grievances with Scream 2. Everyone who matters survives except Randy Meeks. Literally everyone else who dies in Scream 2 is a you don't know or don't give a about. Usually both. My second major grievance is that not only are all the other victims people you don't know or give a about, the ghost faces are some you don't know or give a about. And it's infuriating. And I'll tell you why. One of the only things I enjoy in Scream 2 is Randy being there to give us the horror rules and his little quips and thoughts about horror and film in general, just like he did in the first movie. Only this time, he's giving us the rules about sequels specifically, which is generally that they're supposed to go bigger.
Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage, candy.
So in this sequel, where things are supposed to be bigger and better, Ghostface is Billy Loomis's bitch ass nobody mother we don't know from Adam, and some random nut she found and convinced to let her pay his college tuition so we could go to college just to go on a murder spree to avenge the psychopathic serial killing son who only started killing because her bitch ass abandoned him?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Like, bitch, if you want to avenge your son, slit your own throat. You did this. You left your child. But in all seriousness, this reveal was super ass. And I'll elaborate as to why. What made Billy and Stu being the killers in the first Scream hit so hard is because Billy and Stu were core members of Sydney's friend group that we had every reason to suspect but either doubted ourselves or couldn't bring ourselves to, and their reveals felt like a betrayal. Like, damn, Stu came across like a lovable ass charismatic idiot in love with his girlfriend Tatum who ain't ever did shit to him but love him. So it's wild when you realize he killed her for no reason. It's wild to experience Billy manipulate Sydney the entire movie until she gives him her virginity, only to learn this killed her mother, and now he's trying to murder her in addition to having just murdered her best friend. On top of that, it's the performance from both Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard that make them being Ghostface so impactful. Billy is handsome and menacing in a way that feels like no one but Skeet Ulrich could have brought to life.
You don't still think it was me, do you?
What do I have to do to prove to you that I'm not a killer?
Stu is charming and lovable in an unhinged serial killing shaggy way, even after you realize this big dumb bitch let his boy convince him to be a serial killer.
Tell that to Cotton Weary. Wouldn't believe how easy he was to frame.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. It was fun.
Also, people Stu looking at Billy yet again. Stay woke. But there is nothing to connect with in Scream 2's Ghostfaces. While Billy was menacing and unforgettable, Laurie Metcalf's performance as his mother is cartoonish and unserious.
My motive isn't as 90s as Mickey's. Mine is just good old-fashioned revenge. You killed my son.
I'm glad Laurie was able to redeem herself 28 years later with her role as Ed Gein's mother in Ryan Murphy's Monster, the Ed Gein Story, because she ate that shit up. But Scream? Not so much. But I blame the plot more than I blame her performance, because even though I felt it was a cartoonish performance, the reveal was always going to be lackluster because we don't know that bitch, and we had no reason to suspect that bitch because we don't know that bitch.
Mrs. Loomis? What?
Billy's mother. Nice twist, huh? Didn't see it coming.
Like, no, we didn't see it coming, but it's not a good twist because there's nothing that happened in the movie that upon learning she's Ghostface make us go, I should have known. No, we shouldn't have. Because in the movie, all she'd been was a random reporter annoying Gale in a couple of scenes in passing. There's nothing else in the movie that in retrospect would make you go, oh, I wonder if Ghostface is Billy's nut-ass mummy getting revenge and pretend to be this one random reporter who talking to Gale a couple of times. And And worse than the reveal of Billy's whack-ass mom is her partner, some random Mickey that they definitely should have suspected, because not only was he a weird-ass suspicious jump, Randy clocked him immediately.
So forget the boyfriend. He's tired. Who else do we got? There's Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student.
But it's Scream tradition to outright acknowledge exactly who they should suspect and then just simply not follow up on it. The same thing happens in Scream 5 when Dewey tells Samantha to suspect her boyfriend Richie, which is quite literally the only time in the entire franchise that Dewey had a shred of common sense. But like the shitty police officer he always was, he just doesn't investigate Richie at all. Zero follow-up. Just cleared the suspect list for absolutely no reason.
Rule number 1, never trust the love interest. They seem sweet, caring, supportive, and then welcome to Act 3 where they're trying to rip your head off.
I was with Sam in Modesto when Tara was attacked.
And let me guess, you were just in the other room, conveniently unaccounted for when she was attacked at the hospital.
But back to Mickey in Scream 2. His motive makes zero sense.
Billy was a sick fuck who tried to get away with it. Mickey is a sick fuck who wants to get caught. Yeah. See, I've got my whole defense planned out. I'm gonna blame the movies. It hasn't been done before. You see, this is just the beginning, a prelude to the trial. That's where the real fun is, because these days it's all about the trial. Can't you see it? The effects of cinema violence on society. I'll get Dershowitz or Cochran to represent me. Bob Dole on the witness stand in my defense. Hell, the Christian Coalition will pay my legal fees. It's airtight, Sid. I'm an innocent victim.
He's literally just a CVS brand Stu with none of the motive, depth, or stakes. Stu was following behind his best friend Billy, who I also suspect he was in love with, and Billy convinced him to murder his own girlfriend and terrorize his own friends. There's a reason why it shocks you that Stu is Billy's partner. But this guy, Mickey, is just some nut-ass Billy's mom rented. It makes no sense. Like there's rentaserialkiller.com.
You two are in this together?
Yeah, well, had to have financing. Tuition's expensive. Deb there, my backer. We met on the internet, psycho website, classifieds.
There's only an estimated 97 active serial killers in the country today, so Mickey here was quite fine. Definitely one on the way up. All he needed was a little guidance and you're...
You know how silly this nonsense was? She just rented a serial killer who wanted someone to pay his college tuition so he could murder Sydney and her friends so he could get caught, so he could blame the movies at trial. As though that would do anything other than still get him sent to prison for the rest of his life if he's lucky, and death row if he's not.
I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand, bitch. I don't understand.
The problem is that they'd already told us Scream 2 is supposed to be them going bigger and better. So these two nobodies are supposed to be you going bigger and badder than the original? This is the follow-up to Billy Loomis and Stu Macher? These are the two idiots. Y'all let be the people who killed off Randy Meeks? They specifically had my Randy clock sequels as inferior films, only to be killed in said inferior film.
Suggesting that someone's trying to make a real-life sequel.
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck. No, come on, man. Oh, please, please. By definition alone, they're inferior film.
Ain't that about a bitch? Paul went out for my Randy Meeks.
I really miss my nigga. I really miss my nigga. White people you can sing it to, just change that into a W. Miss my wigger.
What really irritates me about killing Randy off isn't just that Randy was my favorite character next to Gail. My biggest gripe is that it was a mistake to kill Randy off because my is the one who establishes half the lore and the framework for solving the mystery, and they need him, and they know it. Which is why in Scream 3, they had to go to the trouble of having him appear posthumously with a video he allegedly recorded before his death to help them figure out who Ghostface is should it ever happen again.
Told you I'd make a movie someday. Huh?
Oh my god.
Well, if you're watching this tape, it means, as I feared, I did not survive these killings here at Windsor College. And that giving up my virginity to Karen Kolchak at the video store was probably not a good idea.
Karen Kolchak?
Yes, Karen Kolchak.
Creepy Karen?
Shut up. She's a sweet person.
And they also find a way to basically just reincarnate him in the body of his black niece in Scream 5 and 6. That's how necessary that Randy Meeks was to the franchise. So they might as well had never killed my boy. If a legacy character needed to die in Scream 2, I would have volunteered Deputy Dumbass Dewey Riley as tribute.
Yup.
Yup. Yes, you heard me. I waited this long to come right out and tell you I don't Dewey Riley. And Scream 3 is probably a perfect place for us to get into why. Now, whilst I did not love Scream 2, I didn't hate it. It had its moments. Not many of them, but still, it had its moments. Scream 3, however, is the only movie in the Scream franchise that is a hot, stinking pile of shit.
Ooh, smells like pee-pee and poo-poo in here. It's gotta be Tony. No, seriously, why does it smell like caca and wee-whiz in here?
Basuda, you hear me? Truly a painful watch. And there is a very simple reason why. What makes Scream movies special is our connection to the characters. In Scream 3, we do not give a about the characters, because the entire plot of Scream 3 is that Hollywood is making another stab movie based on the Woodsboro murders, and a new Ghostface has emerged to specifically kill the miscellaneous nobodies cast to play the characters we once loved in the stab movies.
I don't give a fuck. Do I look like I give a fuck? Because I don't.
I watched Tatum, Randy, and most anybody who's ever given a about Sidney Prescott get packed the up already. Do you think I care if their understudies die? No. The only noteworthy victims in Scream 3 are Cotton Weary and his girlfriend, who are killed in the opening scene of the movie. When we meet my boy Cotton Weary in the first Scream, he's been falsely accused and convicted of murder. In Scream 2, he's exonerated and saves Sidney's life from Ghostface, only to finally make it in Hollywood by Scream 3 and get killed at the top of the movie. Cotton did not deserve that shit. But let me ask y'all this. Who among us gave a really? Cotton was not a near and dear to our hearts. There's really only one thing I find noteworthy from Scream 3, and if you think it's that Ghostface turns out to be Sidney Prescott's secret half-brother her mom had and gave up for adoption long before she ever moved to Woodsboro, played by Scandal Scott Foley, you would be wrong.
Roman Bridger, director. And brother.
I don't even know who you are.
But just so you know, Ghostface was Sidney's secret half-brother Roman, who was born as the product of Marie and Prescott being raped when she was in Hollywood, causing her to give up the child and leave Hollywood and never mention it again. The child then grows up resentful of his mother and her new family. So he enlists Billy Loomis to kill her and frame Cotton Weary before finding an elaborate way to kill Sidney because he's jealous she got to be raised by their mom. I'm sure that plot sounded fascinating when they cooked it up, but no baby. The plot works in theory, but not in reality for so many reasons. First, just like the Ghostface reveal fell flat in Scream 2, the Scream 3 reveal fell flat because we hadn't actually been given any clues that would indicate that Sidney had a secret evil half-brother, let alone that he was the director of the latest stab movie that Sidney had no involvement in. So there's no way we would have been able to solve the mystery on our own. So there's no aha moment where all the clues come together when he's revealed. It's just like, oh, okay, so he's Ghostface, that's our brother then. Oh. Second, his motive, backstory, and evil plan is just too convoluted. Let me break this down for y'all. Roman is a good-looking man who managed to get to make his own major Hollywood movie, but he's so unhinged that literally means nothing to him. It's just an excuse to go on a murdering spree of his own cast so he can hopefully murder his half-sister after revealing himself to her and murdering the man he blamed for getting his mom assayed in Hollywood. That's what he wants to do, as opposed to like getting rich and famous and successful. Okay. I'm supposed to believe that he's that unhinged, but he somehow needed Billy and Stu to carry out his evil agenda and murder her while he remained quietly and secretly in the shadows for years, never having met Sidney or all this other bullshit. I am supposed to believe a nutty enough to murder a bunch of Hollywood actors cast in his own film felt like he needed to convince a teenager to kill for him, and then just kind of spent years chilling in the tux till he came up with this elaborate plan? Why? There's just so many levels to the sense it doesn't make. Scream 3 is the laziest movie in the franchise. They thought about nothing, least of all Ghostface. So back to what I was saying about there only being one noteworthy thing about Scream 3, and that's Mark the cop. While Mark does turn out to be fairly useless, he was played by beautiful ass Patrick Dempsey, and He's who our girl Sydney eventually marries and has kids with. I don't expect you to know that if you're not deep in Sidney Prescott's business, because it's never outright said. In Scream 3, there's a little chemistry between Sydney and Mark, but nothing overt. They really don't give my girl Sydney much to do in that movie at all. So nothing romantic ever actually happens with them in the movie. But at the very end of the movie, after they've defeated Ghostface, i.e. killed Sydney's half-brother, we see Sydney, Mark, Gail, and Dewey all hanging out at Sydney's place. But even still, how do I know that Sydney and Mark made it to marriage? Well, in Scream 6, which is the only Scream that Sidney Prescott's not in because they refuse to pay Neve Campbell what she's worth after carrying the franchise on her back for decades. So in order to explain away Sydney's absence, Gail tells Sam that Sydney's taken Mark and the kids somewhere safe.
I talked to Sydney. She's not coming here, is she? No, she sends her love, but she's taking Mark and the kids someplace safe.
So now that we've established that, Scream 3 was doomed before the movie began because it defied what makes the Scream movies very special the moment it decided that the victims would be people we don't care about. Ghostface would be a we don't know, and Sydney would have very little going on in the movie. Scream 3 is mostly about Gail and Dewey's relationship, which is why I waited until now to give you my thoughts on Gail, Dewey, and Gail and Dewey's piece of shit relationship.
That's right, I said it.
You heard me. Gail and Dewey's piece of shit relationship. I think I should start off by saying that I am no better than any of you. I too was bamboozled by Courtney Cox and David Arquette's chemistry into liking Dewey and rooting for Gail and Dewey to be together. Until one day, I saw the light, and it was a blinding light. I'll never be in the dark again. This section will consist of 3 central arguments. First, Gail Weathers was, is, and will forever be that bitch, and Gail nothing but apologies. Second, Dewey was a horrible cop. Brother, boyfriend, and husband. But it never got addressed because we have been conditioned to think there's something cute about incompetent, entitled who can't do shit right.
Stop! He's already dead.
Yeah, I said it. Third, Gail and Dewey's relationship was ass. Now let's address the first point. Before I say one word about Gail Weathers as a character, let me start by giving Courtney Cox her fans. Because they could have called Gail a bitch if they want, as long as they put bad in front of it, because that was a bad bitch, you hear me?
Courtney Cox, I love you. You're so hot on that show.
Dad? Now on to serious business. Gail Weathers has only ever done, and I feel this strongly, Gail Weathers has only ever done her job and had a bunch of jobless bitches and a useless cop judging her for doing it, even after she has repeatedly saved their lives or been instrumental in saving their lives. The very first time we meet Gail Weathers in the first Scream, Gail is doing her job, reporting on the news, and she asks for a comment from Sydney, who promptly punches Gail in the face because Gail wrote a book arguing that Cotton Weary was innocent of Maureen Prescott's murder and Sydney's testimony wrongfully put him in jail.
Well, it'll be out later this year. I'll send you a copy.
Whole time, Gail was right. God forbid this bitch do some investigative journalism to find the truth and advocate against an innocent man being convicted of a crime he didn't commit. And I am here to tell y'all that it does not matter how many times they try to vilify Gail as only doing any of this work to further her career. Even if that was the case, there is quite literally nothing wrong with that. It's her job, and it's a meaningful job at that. She is a journalist and a writer, a hardworking and a good one. There is a reason why we want journalists to bust their ass getting to the truth. We want journalists to investigate. We want journalists who don't just accept what the police tell them. And we should respect bitches for having even a fraction of the commitment and work ethic this bitch Gail has. It is only women who get painted as morally bankrupt or flawed for being career-oriented or ambitious. And not only does every single movie devote itself to chastising or maligning Gail in some way for doing the work she's been doing since before any of these ever met her, they usually have the man they want us to believe is her soulmate, advancing the harshness of these criticisms against her.
Again.
You'd love that, wouldn't you? Better hurry, Gail. Might get scooped.
Dewey fixed his mouth to accuse Gail of being happy there's another Ghostface, like she's some random opportunist and not a journalist and writer who risked her life and shot Billy, preventing him from murdering Sydney and everyone else. Dewey not only thinks that his romantic feelings for Gail mean she should be with him regardless of whether the relationship works for or serves either one of their needs, he also thinks it means she should make herself small to make him feel big. And when she doesn't, he spews resentment and vitriol at her. But before we get into Gail and Dewey specifically, let me stick on just getting justice for Gail. I'll get back to this point, don't worry. Gail isn't just some random thirsty journalist or writer making money off the Woodsboro murders or other people's life stories. The Woodsboro murders are just as much Gail's story as they are Sydney's, Dewey's, Sam's, Tara, or anyone else who's ever had the audacity to get in Gail's face about writing about them. That's her life too. Moreover, Gail literally be saving these lives time and time again, while Dewey be somewhere on his back because he done been stabbed, knocked out, or hemmed up by the killer. In Scream 2, after Gail has been proven correct about Cotton Wary and literally saved Sydney's life, this is still how Sydney gives it up when Gail admittedly ambushed her with Cotton.
Do you have any comments? You bitch.
Hey, deep breaths.
Oh, Sydney, share with us, please. I'll share with you.
But if we keep it G real, Sydney very much so did owe Gail and Cotton an interview. She did. And Gail still ends up taking a bullet behind trying to help Sydney and ends up killing Mickey with Sydney. In Scream 3, Gail is running all up and down trying to stop Ghostface and protect Sydney. In Scream 4, Gail is yet again right there with Sydney to do what has to be done as always. In Scream 5,
Stop, I'm sorry about Dewey.
Fuck you.
In Scream 6, same thing. Yet this is how bitches who only just get in the franchise be trying to treat Gail after she done helped save their life.
Do you ladies think you're the reason the Ghostface killer has come to the Big Apple? Nice try, sweetie. But I've done this dance before. God. Stay away from us.
Imagine thinking Gail shouldn't do a job and write her books that she been writing long before she ever know y'all. Look here. In short, everybody needs to put some respect on Gail Weathers' name, and they need to do it immediately. But y'all need to put far less respect on Dewey's name. Let's talk about it.
Damn it, Dewey.
What did Mama tell you? When I wear this badge, you treat me like a man of the law.
That's one of my favorite aspects of Dewey, is that he's in a position of power, but no one gives him respect. You know, I always think in Dewey's mind, I always think like he thinks he's kind of Clint Eastwood. You know, he thinks he's really cool, but then, you know, nobody else does.
I think Dewey Riley is the most incompetent fictional police officer to ever grace my television screen. And I hate how long it took me to hone in on that and to hold it against him to the magnitude he deserved to have it held against him at. Because Dewey needed to have his badge taken away from him and set on fire. But somehow, the man just kept failing up. In the first Scream, we meet Deputy Dewey Riley, who is the older brother of Sydney's best friend Tatum, who was played by Rose McGowan. The moment we meet him, we're informed that neither his sister, mother, or anyone else takes him being a police officer seriously. And for good reason. Because Dewey, Deputy Dewey, knows that a mass serial killer is murdering teenagers at his sister's high school. In fact, the mass serial killer is specifically targeting his sister's best friend. So the killer is likely one of the students at the school. And as a result, the school closed and sent the kids home to protect them. And the police department, the one Dewey works at, has issued a curfew for these kids to be at home by. So please tell me how it's possible that Dewey drives his sister and her best friend, that the killer is after, to a house party with a bunch of other teens from the school. And if you wanted to defend the police officer who decided it was a good idea to take his sister and her bestie he's supposed to be protecting from a serial killer to a party in the woods filled with people, maybe you'd say something like, he must have thought he'd be there with them protecting them to make sure they're safe. But you'd still be wrong. Because instead of staying at the party where the people he's supposed to be protecting from a very real and imminent threat are at, he leaves the party to go wandering off into the woods because he's more focused on trying to seize on the opportunity to flirt with Gail fine ass. And you know what happens while he's off in the bushes worrying about Gail? His sister in the house getting hemmed the up by her boyfriend Master's Ghostface. And yes, her boyfriend. Stu killed Tatum, not Billy. I do not have time to make this case to y'all. Watch this video if you need convincing. It was Stu. We will put it in the description below. But my point is, Dewey is so competent. His sister gets killed, and this raggedy don't even discover the body because he too busy getting stabbed on the porch. You would think it would be a big deal that Dewey's sister and Sydney's best friend died, but when I tell you they don't never mention Tatum damn near ever again, Dewey didn't mourn my girl a lick, and it's always annoyed me. So I was glad to see even David Arquette and Rose McGowan acknowledge it themselves.
Also amazing, at least to the actors in hindsight, was the fact that no one, including Tatum's own brother, Deputy Dewey, seemed to acknowledge poor Tatum's untimely demise.
I feel quite badly that Dewey was never sad about Tatum's death.
I mean, I obviously should have mourned the death of my sister.
What a cold...
That happened later in the hospital room. What do you mean she's gone?
Dewey is inept from day one, but his and Gail's initial attraction in the first Scream makes you overlook it because he comes across like a nice, naive guy. But by Scream 2, we see the beginning of Dewey's entitled badass ways. Because somewhere along the lines, Dewey decided that because he and Gail liked each other, flirted, dated, or what have you, that she owed this man and she was obligated to be with him against all logic. The moment Gail does not do what Dewey wants, he be not only disparaging her, but embracing the exact kind of nasty rhetoric other people have to say about her. This is what Dewey had to say about Gail in her career when he first met her and she hadn't yet failed to commit to him.
You are much prettier in person.
So you do watch the show?
I'm 25. I was 24 for a whole year.
Now, peep how he's talking to her at the top of Scream 2 when she's doing the exact work she always has. The last time he saw her, she was saving their lives, but he's mad because nothing came of their romance in the first movie.
Just a little bit?
No. What I think is that you're money-hungry, fame-seeking, and forgive me for saying mediocre, right?
If you let Dewey tell it, Gail is always all these terrible things according to Dewey whenever they're in together, but he'd still be pressed to try to force a relationship with her. And here's what really gets me. Dewey should have been fired from the force after the events of Scream, but when the Windsor College students get killed at the stab premiere, they somehow call Dewey for advice. So Dewey hobbles onto campus talking about they want his advice because he helped solve the murders last time. And I'm over here like, solve? Help, solve, help. Dewey was asleep on the porch bleeding out while the mystery was being solved, mind you. But he shows up to Windsor just to do absolutely nothing but have an attitude with Gail.
Why don't you just leave her alone? Hasn't she been through enough?
And get stabbed again. Not only is he telling Gail leave Sydney be, like Gail ain't saved Sydney life last movie, but this is Dewey's contribution to stopping Ghostface and saving Sydney in Scream 2. And this was Gail's contribution. But Scream 2 ends with Gail presumably finally giving a relationship with Dewey a shot, and Scream 3 begins with Dewey back on God's hair level shit.
Well, surprise, surprise. Someone dies and Gail comes running.
Gail, I think you'll really appreciate my character work in this one. Someone's helped me understand the real you. Someone? Your ruthless ambition, your private self-loathing.
Let me break down the many ways that Dewey had Gail f***ed up. First of all, y'all see what I say about him constantly trying to disparage Gail for doing her job as though he don't be there doing the same shit? What the f*** does he mean? Surprise, surprise, someone dies and Gail comes running. Second, at this point, we know that they are always potential targets of Ghostface, so Gail is trying to stop Ghostface for her own safety just as much as they are, which is why they are all always also a part of Gail's plan. Third, back to my first point. Do y'all know how crazy it is for a cop to say to a journalist, surprise, surprise, someone dies and Gail comes running? Like the two of those professions aren't exactly who you'd expect to be present on the scene of such events? Dewey literally be pulling up at the same time as Gail, which brings me to my second point. Is that not you in Scream 2 flying overnight to Windsor College the moment you heard about the murders? Talking about the police asked for your help because you experienced it? Ain't that crazy? And he want to have a fucking attitude with Gail the whole time.
I want to get something straight. I only got into this because the police asked for my help.
Why would police come to you?
You serious?
Dewey thinks that the police be calling him for help to consult on these murders, but not Gail, the bitch who actually writes the books on the murders and be shooting the killers.
Well, I did write the definitive book on the Woodsboro murders.
I'm sure you just can't wait to write another one.
Are you fucking kidding me?
In the same breath that Dewey be wanting to disrespect Gail's writing, work, and career, and personhood, really, the is so obsessed with her that in Scream 3, he's now dating the woman cast to play her in a movie based on the books Gale wrote, and has somehow emboldened the bitch cast to play Gale to also spew hate and resentment at Gale. And it's just like, for what reason? What reason does this bitch who's getting a check to play Gale have to disrespect Gale? And what reason does Dewey have? Because they broke up? Not only would simply breaking up with Dewey never be a reason to justify disrespecting her and showing her so much contempt, but that's not even what fucking happened.
I think I took care of you. I waited until you were well, but I couldn't stay there. It's like dog years. 1 year in Woodsboro is like 7 anywhere else.
So it's off to Paris for a week, New York for a month, LA forever?
It was fucking 60 minutes too. I couldn't say no. I could have been the next Diane Sawyer.
Wait, what's wrong with just being Gale Weathers? I liked her.
Gale commit to him. She nursed him back to health after he got his ass stabbed up for a second time. Mind you, my girl was recovering from being shot her damn self. She moved to Woodsboro and stayed there for a year. And this mad because he wants her to say no to opportunities of a lifetime and refuse to go to New York with her because he cannot stomach feeling like a small fish in her world. He needs her to come make herself small in Woodsboro. He needs her to quell her ambitions. And because she wouldn't, he dumps her. And now he round the place showing her a attitude for what? Like Gale said.
It didn't work, Dewey. We tried. We're different.
Dewey could simply accept that they don't work for each other, but instead he maligns Gale to anybody who will listen and delights in anyone disrespecting her. The man disparaging Gale left, right, and center because, let me check my notes. He dumped her after she spent a year in Woodsboro putting her life and career on hold. Yet somehow he's back to slandering her with the same old tired shit. And it never stops.
Did he know about it?
Listen, Sydney doesn't need you and your camera in her life.
Oh, do you see a camera? Right. You bought me this purse, didn't you?
Yeah.
This is Dewey MO for the whole franchise. Gale done helped save Sydney and all of their lives twice now. And she took a bullet, and somehow he's back to nonsensically acting like he protecting Sydney from wicked ass journalist Gale. Mind you, Dewey bought the special bag for holding her camera that she's carrying. Because Dewey does not have a problem with Gale's job if she's with him. He doesn't have some moral objection to it that he feigns like he has when they're not together. And that's indicated by the fact that he's literally standing there, working on the set of the movie made off the books Gale writes that he vilifies her for. And gal who playing Gale in said movie.
But you're supposed to be in Woodsboro.
Well, I'm surprised you thought about me at all. Listen, I gotta get back to work. I really don't have time for this.
Wait a minute. You work here?
Yeah. The movie needed a technical advisor, someone who went through the real experience, knew the real people.
Dewey is one who I cannot stand. He's giving her an attitude, talking about, I'm surprised you thought about me at all. Meanwhile, the reason my girl Gale says you're supposed to be in Woodsboro with the energy she did is because she's trying to figure out how the man who broke up with her after she moved to Woodsboro for him for a year because he refused to even try living in New York for her because it's too big of a pond for him is suddenly in Hollywood on movie sets a bitch cosplaying her.
What about you?
What about me?
You said you'd never leave Woodsboro. The only place that's real. But now you're here. Not with me.
The attitude Dewey giving her would have you swearing she'd do something to him. But no. And this is still the discussion about Dewey's overall uselessness. So I, of course, would be remiss if I didn't point out that he gets knocked the out for most of the time that Sydney is fighting Ghostface. And even when he does get the opportunity to deliver the final shot to Roman when he pops back up, he still couldn't do that without Sydney's direction. Then after giving Gale a bunch of attitude for absolutely no reason all movie, the entire movie, he then announces to her that he knows their relationship doesn't work, but he wants her to marry him anyway.
Huh? I know it'll never work. You know it'll never work, but what I'm asking is just to see if we're wrong. We don't know everything, Gil.
This the bullshit y'all want me to for? I know it'll never work. You know it'll never work, but no but. Who the consciously goes into a marriage knowing it don't make no sense? Dewey? Because that's basically what Dewey's agenda has been every movie. Dewey's agenda is, I know good and well we don't work together, but if you don't be with me, I'm going to hate you, treat you bad, and say that you're a bad person. This is a nightmare we were tricked into rooting for, and that is confirmed to me in Scream 4 when we learned that Gail did marry him. She quit her job as a reporter and stayed in Woodsboro for 10 years at the detriment of her career and goals, so Dewey could feel like a big man as sheriff. This is a deleted scene from Scream 4, but look at the box my girl was forced into in order to make Dewey happy.
I'd go if I could, but I gotta work, you know. Not that you don't have to. Well, you know what I mean. I heard writer's block's off. Well, at least you get to wear your pajamas to work.
Gail gives up her career so Dewey can be the most incompetent sheriff Woodsboro should have known better than to hire. And he's still competing with his wife, which is why he still tries to sideline Gail's investigation of Ghostface. Whole time, he has never solved the Ghostface mystery on his own, has always needed Gail. And he hired his deputy sheriff, a bitch who's actively into him and disrespecting his wife because Dewey want to feel like somebody. And then, after 10 years of marriage, 10 years that Gail stayed in Woodsboro and gave up her career for Dewey. When she wants them to move to New York City for her career, he spends 2 months there and then up and leaves her. Dewey divorced Gail, and then he somehow still shows up in Scream 5, right back to spewing resentment and animosity to her, questioning her character and accusing her of never caring about him, and quite literally the exact bullshit he did in Scream 2 and 3. Only now, it's after she spent a decade sacrificing to be with him, and several years after he left her.
Couldn't resist a good story, could you?
Don't be an idiot, Dewey. I'm here because I was worried about you. Okay, yes, my producers wanted me to cover this for obvious reasons, but 90% is because of you.
Well, I feel 90% better.
Don't be so sensitive.
Since when did you care about my feeling?
Hey.
Especially not in the last couple of years.
All right, listen, let's not pretend I'm the one who ended things.
No one's pretending, Gail. I remember what happened. I don't need your pity, Gail. I made my choices, so did you.
It was my turn. It was a great opportunity. You said you'd try.
And I did.
For 2 whole months.
Listen, if you want to make me feel worse than I already do, good luck. The mornings aren't so bad because I get to see you. Then I'm still back there in New York. Then I remember that I couldn't hack it. I left in the middle of the night. A coward.
After 10 years of marriage, 10 years she did a bid in Woodsboro supporting him in his career. He spent 2 months in New York City doing the same with her and left in the dead of night and divorced her. But somehow he's still playing the victim. It breaks my heart that Gail was muscled into settling for a relationship that she knew didn't work for her with a man who resented her and her success and cost her the career that she envisioned for herself and worked for and had every right to want. That shit is a nightmare. I think we are conditioned to expect women to choose men in relationships over career. We're conditioned to expect women to sacrifice their own desires for men in relationships. So much so, it doesn't even register to us as a loss or a problem. And I think it's even worse when the women aren't necessarily relatable to us. Most folks probably don't actually relate to Gail Weathers or can't put themselves in her shoes. But let me tell y'all something. Dewey scoffing at that bitch getting the opportunity to be on 60 Minutes and essentially telling her to aspire for less because he likes her with the less is all I needed to hear that to know he was an op. Like, why should she aspire for more if he likes her and is comfortable with where she's at now? Like, his feelings have shit to do with the price of tea in China. Dewey was that woman's op. And I say that as a woman whose husband was sitting in the room quietly cheering for me when I was eating Eric Adams up in the Breakfast Club. Ambitious women deserve partners who support us and partners who never question why you should take the opportunities that come your way. We deserve partners who root for us to get bigger and bigger. And I have that, but Gail did not. So I am alone on an island of one in the Scream fandom when I tell you I was okay with Dewey and Gail being divorced in Scream 5, okay? I might even be happy about it. Yup. But none of this means that I wasn't still fully invested in Dewey and Gail's relationship. Of course I was. I only recently discovered that I hate Dewey and Gail's relationship when I sat down and watched all 6 movies back to back. Somehow, when you watch them back to back in one sitting, you see Dewey clearly. Nevertheless, Dewey and Gail as a couple are still at the core of what makes Scream special.
The whole David thing was very interesting because we offered him a role of one of the kids.
I read it, and I came in and I said, Wes, I really would rather do the role of Dewey. And he was like, Dewey? Well, why would you want to do that role? It's like, well, I do get to kiss Courtney Cox. And
If I may say so, Miss Weathers, you are much prettier in person.
I took a chance on this guy, wants it so much. So Dewey became kind of the heart of the movie.
My character was supposed to die in the first one.
Didn't he?
We liked David's portrayal of Dewey so much that we brought him back.
And we all kind of looked at each other and said, we'd be really stupid if we didn't film a shot of Dewey coming out being alive. And so we did. We stuck it on the last day of shooting there.
And I was like, really, wow. And then it's completely changed my life. That decision on the set at that time is just kind of unbelievable.
So it's only right that we pour one out for Dewey one time for the one time.
I really miss my nigga. I really miss my nigga. White people you can sing it to, just change that into a W. Miss my wigger.
I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I know it's the correct one. Drum roll, please. Scream 4 is the second best movie in the franchise, and it's not close. Boom. I remember the first time I saw Scream 4. I was in boarding school in West Virginia, where the only freedom I had was when they'd take us to the movie theater on the weekends, which means I saw every movie that came out from 2009 to 2011. And while I don't remember every movie I saw those years, I remember watching Scream 4 vividly because I remember the energy around me as the movie went on and everyone in the theater started realizing that the movie was way better than we thought it was going to be. I remember exactly how I felt when I realized who Ghostface was because I can remember hearing people audibly gasp at both Ghostface reveals. What makes Scream 4 the standout Scream sequel to me is that it got back to the heart of what made the first Scream special. The characters and the relationships. Scream 4 is the first time since the original where it felt true to the original, but very new, where we got a whole new cast that we could and did invest in. But our original faves were present and organically important to the story. The spark notes of the plot of Scream 4 is as follows. Sydney returns to Woodsboro on the 15th anniversary of the Woodsboro murders as a part of her book tour for her memoir, Out of Darkness. But two teens are murdered by Ghostface, and then Ghostface begins calling and threatening Sydney's niece, Jill Roberts, played by Emma Roberts, before murdering Jill's friend Olivia. At this point, Gail is no longer a reporter because she traded in her career to play supporting cast member to Dewey, who is now the sheriff of Woodsboro, but he's literally just as incompetent as he's always been. So Gail is left to investigate Ghostface on her own and help Sydney keep her niece safe. But just like in Scream, there's a party, although this one is much smaller, and Jill sneaks out to attend it. But when Jill's mother is murdered by Ghostface, Sydney races to Kirby's house to try to protect Jill from Ghostface, only to eventually learn that Ghostface is in fact her niece Jill, who's contrived this elaborate plan to recreate the Woodsboro killings centered around herself as the lone survivor and to kill and frame Sydney so Jill could become famous. Sydney survives and she and Gail kill Jill. Now, let's really get into why Scream 4 did what Scream 2 and Scream 3 could not. In Scream 3, Ghostface was revealed to be Sydney's half-brother Roman, but this fell flat because Sydney didn't spend any time with Roman throughout that movie. Roman had no relationship with either Sydney or us as the audience. So when we find out it's him, it doesn't have the effect the betrayal of a family member should have because for all intents and purposes, he's not Sydney's family. She don't know that. And neither do we. But when Jill is revealed as Ghostface, you feel shocked shitless because not only have you just finished watching Sydney spend the entire movie's run risking her to protect her, you quickly remember that Ghostface killed Jill's mom, which means Jill killed her own mother just to be famous like Sydney. And that's how we know we're cooking with evil personified. The reveal hits because it's the first time since Billy Loomis that all the puzzle pieces immediately came together and you realize that you did have every reason to suspect her. You probably should have seen it coming, but you didn't because you got sucked in by the chemistry of the group. You really thought this bitch at minimum really with Kirby the long way.
She a real bad bitch, got her own money. She don't need no nigga on the dance floor.
And if not Kirby, at least her own mother. When we meet Jill in the movie, we're also introduced to her best friends Olivia and Kirby, and eventually her ex-boyfriend Trevor and the two resident film geeks Charlie and Rock. And we're also made familiar with their dynamics very quickly, and it feels true to the original but still organic. Olivia was the beautiful friend who was quickly gutted like a fish. Rest in peace to Olivia. Kirby, a bad bitch with duality and an appreciation for horror movies, was Jill's best friend. She was played by Hayden Panettiere with a fly-ass pixie. Charlie and Robbie were best friends and co-presidents of the Cinema Club, and they hosted the annual Stabathon movie marathon. I really connected with these characters, probably even more than the core four that would come later in Scream 5 and Scream 6, because while most of the core four are relying on their family ties to legacy characters and or would probably be unmemorable if they weren't being played by people like Jenna Ortega and fine-ass Mason Gooding, Scream 4's friend group felt like they gave us the spirit of the vibes we loved in the first Scream, right down to the deep-seated betrayal and criminals within the group, but not by trying to replicate the same characters or create familial relationships between the new characters and the old, with the exception of Jill, of course. Mind you, I do still enjoy the core four in their own right, but while a character like Mindy Meeks just feels like a Randy Meeks copy placed into a cooler black lesbian to offer us the same horror movie rule commentary that Randy gave us in Scream 1 and 2, and even 3 even though he was dead, Scream 4's Charlie and Robbie felt like their own characters. They were still able to serve Randy's function of providing us the sequel rules, but they weren't Randy copies. They were evolutions. Innovators, really.
You film your entire high school experience and post it on the net?
Everybody will be doing it someday, Sid.
Did they lie? When Robbie informs us that Charlie's been in love with Kirby for years, even though she pays him dust, you can see it. And even though you just met these characters, it feels like you've been right there watching Charlie pine over Kirby all this time and get curved. So you forget you're watching a horror movie for a minute and actually start feeling a little excited for Charlie when him and Kirby start having chemistry and almost kiss. But in an instant, you go from rooting for Charlie and Kirby to hook up, to Kirby fighting for her life to save Charlie from Ghostface, and then you're just not prepared for what comes next. When this Charlie stabbed Kirby, I about passed out, oh my god. And just when you're trying to wrap your head around Charlie just having tried to murder the woman we thought he was in love with, the shit gets worse. Because his partner in crime isn't his best friend Robbie. Oh, no. In fact, our nigga Robbie is dead. And Charlie's partner is Jill, the best friend of the woman he's been pretending to love and just stabbed. Which means it was Jill on the phone torturing Kirby like this just so she could get Kirby to go outside and be stabbed by Charlie. Outside of Scream 3's Roman, there have always turned out to be two Ghostface killers. But what made Billy and Stu special is that both of them being the killers signaled a betrayal on both of their parts. Billy and Stu were both murdering their own friends and girlfriends. In Scream 2, Billy Loomis's mom and random nobody Mickey had betrayed no one really. They had little to no ties to any of these people, so it didn't hit. But in Scream 4, Jill's reveal shocks us because she's killed her own mother and friends in hopes of killing her aunt and framing her for murder. And Charlie's reveal also shocks us because he stabs Kirby, who we thought he was in love with and that he was just pining for. And he either killed or agreed to have Jill kill his own best friend, Robbie. Charlie and Jill's crazy asses were secretly in a relationship and massacred their own friends because their plan was to become famous as the only survivors of the New Woodsboro murders. Or so Charlie's dumbass thought. Jill was a special kind of evil that even Billy Loomis wasn't touching. While I do believe Billy used Stu, never cared about Stu the way Stu cared about him, and very callously stabbed Stu in a way that caused more damage than they discussed because he had very little regard for Stu, Jill outright murders Charlie. And that was the plan all along. And she also murders her mama and all her friends. Not for nothing, Billy loved his mama. Billy wouldn't kill his mommy. And if we keep it real, Billy wouldn't kill his own friends either. He killed Sydney's mom and Sydney's friends. Get it right. We have to give Emma Roberts her flowers because Skeet Ulrich's Billy Loomis was a masterclass on chilling psychopathology. But Emma Roberts plays Jill and other scary bitches in other shows well enough that I would believe you if you told me Emma really killed in real life. Honestly, just looking at this bitch looking deep into your soul, but menacingly. That's some scary shit, right? And there's something just extra insidious and scary about the way she leaves that hospital bed to try to finish Sydney off when she realizes she survived. It's the way she'd stop at nothing. Emma Roberts' performance of Jill was unsettling in a way that Nancy Loomis, Mickey, and Roman had all failed to come anywhere near. And that's why Scream 4 did exactly what needed to be done. I don't think it's unfair to say that the reason we have a Scream franchise is because money. It's a cash grab, okay? Kevin Williamson wrote the original screenplay for Scream, which was originally titled Scary Movie until Bob Weinstein insisted it be changed to Scream, which was the right choice. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, Bob Weinstein, brother of Harvey Weinstein, who was once a famous producer but is now best known for his relationship to the Me Too movement after being criminally convicted for rape and accused of sexually assaulting and harassing more than 80 women during his time in Hollywood. I think it's also worth noting that one of Harvey Weinstein's biggest accusers was Rose McGowan, the actress who played Tatum in the first Scream movie, which was actually her big break. She accused Weinstein of raping her in 1997 after she met him at a Sundance festival, and she also claimed that he ruined her career in retaliation, that she had initially signed an NDA and taken a $100,000 settlement, and that he would eventually later on try to offer her $1 million in hush money in exchange for signing another NDA, but she declined and spoke up. I say all that to say I've always wondered whether this is related to why Tatum has basically been ignored by all of the Scream movies since, but it's just a speculation. Back to what I was saying about cash grabs. After the massive success of the first Scream, Kevin Williamson was given a small window of time to write Scream 2, and then again with Scream 3, because the studio simply wanted to capitalize on the success of the first Scream to make them as much money as possible as quickly as possible. Both Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, as well as others, have complained about the conditions they were forced to make Scream 2 and 3 under, and it showed in the final products. And while it's clear in the dialogue of Scream 3 that it was intended to be the final movie in a trilogy, more than a decade later, we got Scream 4, which was supposed to reboot the series, but despite how great I maintain that Scream 4 was, the Weinstein brothers decided it didn't make enough money to justify making a Scream 5, so they essentially shelved the franchise. However, unfortunately for the Weinstein brothers, more specifically Bob Weinstein, the Weinstein Company collapsed under the weight of all the sexual allegations against Harvey, and they were forced to sell the rights to Scream. Fortunately for us, the rights were purchased by Spyglass Media Group, and they, alongside Paramount, blessed us with the true reboot of the series, Scream 5. Now, what makes Scream 5 special is that it's a requel.
A what? Or like a sequel. Fans are torn on the terminology.
Please speak English.
Scream 5 and 6 are requels because they do maintain and build on the characters, story, legacy, and elements of the movies that came before it, but it's no longer centering the movies around Sidney Prescott and her friends trying to survive Ghostface. They're now centered around Sam and her friends trying to survive Ghostface. But Sam is starkly different than Sidney. While Sam is like Sidney in that she's forced to defeat Ghostface's hell-bent on killing her through no fault of her own, Sidney was a victim of Billy Loomis, while Sam is his daughter. And being the daughter of the man responsible for introducing Ghostface's reign of terror, whether she knew him or not, puts the characters and the audience in this weird position we're not so sure we can trust this new protagonist our faves are meant to help beat Ghostface.
Give me one good reason why I should talk to you.
I'm Billy Loomis's daughter.
That's a terrible reason for me to talk to you.
And even when Ghostface is revealed, and we know definitively Sam isn't Ghostface, even as we're rooting for her, we still don't know that she isn't Billy Loomis deep down. Or at the very least, we don't know that having to lean into her darkest self to defeat Ghostface isn't slowly turning her into him. Because while Sidney will not hesitate to kill Ghostface, she's doing it because she has to. But there's something about how Sam kills Ghostface that shows us that she enjoys it, that she can get carried away if she's not reined in. And that's what made Sam and the direction the Scream reboots were heading in seem so promising. Because even though we like Sam, and we hate how she's treated and vilified for being Billy's daughter when she didn't even know that, and she has these strong relationships with her friends and sister who she really cares about, there are still these signs that she's slowly becoming Ghostface, like a slow descent into madness, that not only we as the audience see, but the people closest to her, namely her sister Tara.
What are you doing? I don't know.
Just look at how Tara looks at her sister as she walks in on her killing Ghostface. You can see the worry in Tara's eyes as she recognizes something darker in her sister. And you can see Sam stop doing what she was doing the way she was doing it in fear of her sister recognizing that darkness in her. When Sam sees how Tara's looking at her, she stops herself and tries to assert that she's not like her father. But you can tell by the look on Tara's face that she's not so sure.
My father was a murderer. No matter what you think, I'm better than that.
Before Sam, Scream never even kinda toyed with the idea of taking a beloved and trusted repeat player like Sidney, Gale, or Dewey and having them descend into becoming the killers that hunt them. Although Wes, a short-lived character in Scream 5, did suggest how plausible this kind of outcome could have been for Dewey.
What about Deputy Dewey here? Maybe he's the killer. No offense.
None taken, but what's my motive?
You got stabbed a billion times, got dumped by your famous wife, and crawled into a bottle. I think it's safe to say you're on the suspect list.
Well, maybe you're the killer, because that cut deep.
It would have actually made a lot of narrative sense had Sydney slowly drifted into madness due to isolation, fear, and distrustfulness after decades of almost being murdered by people fairly close to her and being forced to be a loner due to circumstances. But they wouldn't dare. Which is why I was so pumped for the direction it felt like they were headed in, because they put so much energy into developing this true bond between Sam and Tara as sisters, and this community around Sam and the core four, which was something we never really got to see with Sydney, because she had no siblings outside of a half-brother she had to kill, and all her best friends were murdered. The closest bond we got to see Sydney have was her relationships with Dewey and Gale. And although Sydney and Gale do end up having a sisterhood in their own right, that wasn't really established until Scream 5, and Sydney wasn't even in Scream 6. So in many ways, Sam actually has a more consistent, stable community around her than Sydney had. And those bonds and Sam's commitment to those bonds were constantly on display.
Just a reminder, not a single person in this room hates you. Okay, we have all been through some fucked up stuff, and we are coping with it differently. But I mean, we moved here together for one very specific reason. We're a team.
We are the core fucking folk.
Thank you very much.
I hate
absolutely
myself.
right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yet, we're never allowed to forget that in spite of those bonds and this strong community Sam has and truly does love, our girl has mental illness and is hallucinating her dead serial killing father and trying her darndest not to become him, but the signs are there.
Antipsychotics aren't working as well as they used to, are they?
Fuck you.
You can't run from who you are, Sam.
Turning Sam into Ghostface would have been so ballsy. It's such a huge bummer that we're not gonna get that storyline, because Melissa Barrera, the actress who played Sam, was fired for speaking up against the genocide in Gaza. So she won't be returning to the franchise, and neither will Jenny Ortega, who quit in solidarity with her. Scream is such a petty ass franchise because they wrote Sydney out of Scream 6 because they refused to pay Neve Campbell her worth, only to have to bring her back for Scream 7 after they unceremoniously fired their lead.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
But I'm not here to talk about Scream 7 as it does not yet exist. So let's talk more about Scream 5, Scream 6, what worked and what didn't work. Here is the plot of Scream 5 as told to us by Mindy Meeks, Randy Meeks' niece and member of the Core Four.
See, you can't just reboot a franchise from scratch anymore. The fans won't stand for it. Black Christmas, Child's Play, Flatliners, that shit doesn't work. But you can't just do a straight sequel either. You gotta build something new, but not too new, or the internet goes bug fucking nuts. It's gotta be part of an ongoing storyline, even if the story shouldn't have been ongoing in the first place. New main characters, yes, but supported by and related to legacy characters. Not quite a reboot, not quite a sequel, like the new Halloween, Saw, Terminator, Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, fuck, even Star Wars. It always goes back to the original.
Are you telling me that I'm caught in the middle of fan fucking fiction?
Not just in the middle. You're the star.
I think a lot of people feel about Scream 5 the way I feel about Scream 4. People love Scream 5 because it not only revived the franchise, it returned to form and leaned into nostalgia, but still gave us an entirely new cast to invest in. And to give Scream 5 its real flowers, while I don't necessarily like the Core 4 more than I like Scream 1 or Scream 4's friend groups, each of those friend groups only had one survivor, Sydney and Kirby respectively. So the Core 4 is the first time we've been allowed to love multiple friends within the friend group for multiple movies. And seeing as the heart of Scream movies are the characters and their relationships with each other, Scream 5 and Scream 6 excel in that regard. Scream 6 also gets brownie points for bringing Kirby back. That was a pleasant surprise. I love my bitch and I missed her. I think Scream 5 and 6 are both really good movies with underwhelming Ghostface reveals in my personal opinion. Although, I think Scream 5's reveal was still a strong reveal even though it underwhelmed me. In Scream 5, Ghostface turns out to be Sam's boyfriend Richie and his secret girlfriend Amber, who was Tara's best friend. Richie and Amber were Stab movie fanatics who were angry that they didn't like the last Stab movies, so their nutasses decided to make a real-life Stab movie by killing people related to legacy characters and framing Sam as Ghostface since she's Billy Loomis's daughter in hopes it would inspire the Stab movie writers to make a better Stab movie.
Hollywood's totally fucking out of ideas, so we decided we'd give them some new source material to follow, you know? Bring it back to basics. Because that's how you make a great Stab movie, Sam. Based on actual events.
I think narratively, this was a strong Ghostface reveal for a few reasons. First, it did what I've said several times now makes a good twist. It made perfect sense in retrospect. The moment Richie stabbed Sam, we realized, damn, we did have every reason to suspect this, but we didn't, either because Richie was so nice or because we tricked ourselves into believing it was too obvious of a choice, just like we did with Billy. Moreover, it was meant to mirror the reveals in the first Scream, and it did, in the sense that just like Randy had suggested Billy and Stu were Ghostface at different points, but we simply glossed over it, Dewey had suggested that Richie was Ghostface, but they just moved on. And another thing I really appreciated about Richie and Amber's motivations was that it revealed how the biggest fans of something can be exactly who totally missed the heart of a thing.
You know what the biggest problem with the stab movies is? There's no Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. No bad guy to keep coming back. But the illegitimate daughter of the original mastermind? No, that's a fucking villain.
Richie and Amber are die-hard Stab fans who are enraged that Stab didn't center itself around Ghostface in the way other horror movies center themselves around the villain. And they truly believed that that was what was missing from the franchise, which is why they wanted to frame Sam so the new lore could be more about the villain and the legacy of Billy and Ghostface. Meanwhile, the fact that we don't go back to Scream for Ghostface, but instead for the victims we love is what makes Scream special. But they don't get that. But they're obviously insane, so we can't pay them no mind. The reveal really was only underwhelming to me for one reason and one reason only. Richie and Amber just didn't have shit on Billy and Stu or Jill and Charlie performance-wise. I'm sorry, they did their best, but there's just a certain amount of evil and betrayal that Billy and them showed up with. Nevertheless, it was still a strong reveal, and Scream 5's overall characters and narrative worked. Scream 6 worked too, but in keeping with its predecessor whose image it was made in, Scream 2, it gave us an underwhelming reveal that really took away from the rest of the movie, which I enjoyed a lot for the most part. Just like Scream 2 followed Sydney and Randy to college, Scream 6 followed the core 4 to college. And just like Scream 2's Ghostface was underwhelming because it was Billy's mom getting revenge for a piece of shit son who murdered a bunch of innocent people, Ghostface in Scream 6 turns out to be Richie's father, sister, and brother who somehow want justice for their son that they know went on a murder spree because he was obsessed with some movies. Straight Jacket.
You're a killer, just like your father.
No, I'm not. Yes, you are, you motherfucker. You killed our brother.
What are you talking about? You said your brother died in a car accident.
No, you sweet dumb thing. He died in Woodsboro, at the hands of your bitch sister.
You're Richie's family.
But what's great about Scream 6 is that I think it's okay that we don't care about who Ghostface is, because the final battle, post-reveal, is less about the Ghostface we're fighting and the Ghostface within Sam that she's internally battling. It's not about Ghostface, it's about the relationship between Sam and Tara, and Sam herself and the spirit of her father fighting from within her. Scream 5 and 6 succeed because they make you care about the characters and their relationships more than you care about Ghostface again, which is what makes the core 4 great. That being said, I do wonder whether they're narratively a crutch and can't help but feel that the screenwriters have lost their nerve. Because as much as I like the core 4, and I do, I think both Chad and Mindy Meeks are really charming, Tara's okay, and I like Sam best when she's killing. But there is still absolutely no reason why Chad, Mindy, or Tara are still among the living. I hate to say it, but Guy Busick, James Vanderbilt, and whoever gave them the mandate to keep the core 4 alive are all I said it. If you're wondering who Guy Busick and James Vanderbilt are, they're the writers of Scream 5 and 6. And they're because I'll tell you what I know. If our Kevin Williamson was still writing Scream, we'd be playing the I Really Miss My song for Chad, Mindy, and Tara. I'll tell you that. Kevin Williamson wrote Scream 1, 2, and 4. He notably was not responsible for the basuda that was Scream 3. Glory be to God. Although he did give the new writers some notes and advisory on the direction to go. But back to my point. There is no logical reason Chad, Tara, or Mindy are alive based on the injuries them have sustained in the movies. In Scream 5, look how many times Chad got chopped right up. In Scream 6, look how they do this. Do y'all remember the days when Dewey got stabbed once in the first movie and rightfully had a limp by the second movie? Because injuries matter. You can't get sliced right up and then hop up kissing bitches 2 seconds later. And yes, that happened. Look at Chad after getting jick right up.
How are you alive? fucking forth.
And then Mindy comes sprinting over like she didn't just get stabbed up on the train that day.
I know who the killer is. It's Ethan and Bailey.
Back in my day, when got stabbed, we watched the strength drain from their bodies. When Billy stabbed Stu for real, you watched as Stu started to die and how it limited his ability to move and fight back the way he needed to. We used to feel the weight of the violence being inflicted, and I think I appreciated that a little bit more than keeping the core 4 alive against all odds. And I'm not saying they have to or should kill them. I'm just saying, don't stab them 72 times, then have them lollygagging, doing aerobics and kissing and shit 2 seconds later. Them motherfuckers need to be fighting for their lives in critical condition. All in all, this video is entirely too long. Y'all get the picture. I love Scream. Happy Halloween, and let's run the song one time for all our fallen Aaron.
I really miss my nigga. I really miss my nigga. White people you can sing it to, just change that into a W. Miss my wigger.